Depression. I feel like I am addicted to depression. Here are some of the assorted views by various Redditors. 1. Whenever I feel sad, I don't try to cheer up, I try to make myself sadder because I like it more. I feel addicted to isolating myself from others, and there's a small part of me that enjoys feeling depressed and isolated. Depression feels strangely comforting at times. Does anyone else have this issue? 2. Yes. I spent a good portion of the weekend listening to depressing music on repeat and just wallowing in my misery. I believe it's called fetishizing your pain and definitely isn't healthy. I've found I've gotten better about not doing that as much as I used to, and also don't seek out drugs to numb my pain as much. Nobody's perfect though. Definitely snorted a Xanax last night to calm myself down. Try and distract yourself instead. I've been obsessively reading these posts and trying to offer advice to others, and I feel a little better as a result. 3. The bioavailability nasally is something like 50%, or I think it's even lower. I don't have time to look it up, but you could. The bioavailability orally is 90-something%. I'm sure it still works for you, but you're wasting it because it's still only active orally even if you sniff it as it drips down the back of your throat. Like someone above said, it's not water soluble. There are 0 reasons to sniff Xanax or just about any benzes for that matter, except I think 1 or 2. Take smaller amounts of it if you get stomach upsets, and you'll probably realize that you'd be using it more efficiently than sniffing. It's not uncommon if you take too much of it on an empty stomach to have it give you nausea. The typical remedy to this is to take smaller amounts and spread it out over a longer period of time. Only trying to give you advice on how to save more of your stash, bud. Have a good week, peace. 4. Once I started to dip into a depression, would begin to feel a pull towards it, an attraction. Sort of like I would allow myself to be brought down into a dark but strangely comforting hole. I often describe my depression as alluring and cunning. I find a false comfort in it, a reason to avoid reality. I've felt like this for years and years, but just a couple months ago I was meeting with my therapist. Something he said triggered me to blurt out, I think depression is my addiction. Confessing that verbally in someone else's presence caused a shift in the way I think about my depression. Suddenly I was able to just allow myself to have positive feelings. There was a feeling that maybe I've been exacerbating my depressed moods by purposely limiting any positive experience or thought. I felt guilty and ashamed about it, much like an addict might feel shame for their drug habit that negatively affects important relationships. I spent some time meditating on this idea of treating my depression as addiction. I visualized it differently and ultimately felt like I had more control. I still feel that I have a stronger than average propensity toward experiencing depressed moods, but I also feel that I have control into how addicted I allow myself to become. I'm only several months into this experiment of thinking differently about my depression, but it has brought me a new level of mental clarity and even some hope, so I'm going with it. It has also allowed me to overcome the fear of making some major life changes, quitting my profession, selling car, reevaluating what I value. I know everyone experiences depression differently, but if our versions of it are at all similar, I would recommend trying to fully admit an addiction to it. Then spend some time sitting with your emotions. Meditate. If you feel negative emotions, do your best to observe them. Don't avoid them, but also don't invite them to stay around longer than they naturally do. If you feel positive emotions, observe them first, and then engage them. Tell yourself that it's okay to feel positive emotions. It's okay to feel okay. It's okay to even feel happy. I've been working on this for several months. At the beginning, the amount of positive emotions I was having was close to none, but each time I found something I would try to expand on it. Don't feel frustrated when the depression comes back, just wait for the next positive moment and engage it. It's a mental exercise, observe the negative, engage the positive. It takes mental effort. It is work. Treat it like you would treat exercise for your physical body. 5. One way I've been conceptualizing this problem lately is as an addiction to low energy. Low is down, dark, quiet, can feel safe, like in a protected hole. It's a place to go when you feel overwhelmed, and thinking this way, suicide appears like the ultimate safe hole. Higher energies like joy are brighter, clearer, but can feel sharper, too intense. People want orgasms but not 24/7. Higher energies are much more active, expansive, and communicative though, and I have to believe that we can find a middle way in which we can still feel the depth and safety of the whole, but have our head up in the sunshine where all the life and change is happening. 6. I slip back into my depression or feel like I've screwed up. I kind of enjoy being miserable and find it much easier to sink into it rather than pull myself out, and most of the time I lose my motivation to pull myself out. It's definitely not a healthy habit, and I'm a lot better than I used to be. Therapy had a lot to do with my recovery and I loved and hated going at the same time. Point is, I feel yes and I understand what you're feeling. 7. No, sounds good to me. I went to therapy about a year ago, and one thing I noticed is that I didn't even try to improve on anything I was talking about there. I didn't want to try to be better. I just wanted to stick to that darkness because I feel comfortable in it. It's been there all my life. Who even am I without it? My girlfriend at the time was super positive about everything. She would always try to bring me out of it through this, but I actively fought against it. I don't want to be proven wrong about my worldview, i.e. that everything is horrible. I want to believe everything sucks. Sorry for rambling, I'm sleep deprived and I don't even know if I completely understood your comment properly, but I appreciate the effort you put into it. 8. This is how I feel exactly. I can go weeks, months without the depression as such by keeping myself really busy, but when it starts to make a slight appearance it feels like home. I have had depression for over 30 years and it is me, there is no denying this. I don't have depression, depression has me. It's my curse and my savior, as unlike so many people I have lost I am not afraid to die. 9. I don't like it, but can't help myself. Can't get out, can't get better. The one thing that I do is, I keep telling myself that you don't deserve to be any better or happy either. Whenever I feel slightly normal, something inside me reminds me of thousands of other things to be sad about. It tells me how I'm not deserving enough, reminds me how I was never loved or wanted by anyone, reminds me how much of a big failure I am, how I don't have any single achievement in my life. 10. Not that I enjoyed it, but I wanted to make things worse for myself and others, more so my partner. He tried to make things positive and I would just stay negative. Not realizing that this energy affects others around you as well. It definitely put an impact on my happiness and relationships. I no longer want to stay this way. I am seeking ways to resolve this. Anyone can recommend a therapist? I live in Canada, Ontario. I've seen ones online, is that any better? 11. It's not addiction, you are comfortable. Not that it is pleasant, but we tend to stay where we are comfortable. Been abused and you tend to go towards abuse. Grow up around addiction, get hooked. Grow up sad and it's just what you are used to. I am not going to tell you how to fix it, you have to figure it out. But to do so you have to have perspective. And I would bet that you are just used to being depressed and not sure how to be different. 12. I think as long as you can know that you're doing it, and that what you're doing isn't necessarily the truth, it's perfectly fine to allow your body to feel sadness. I think the psychological problems come in when you're unable to distinguish the aspects of what are making you sad from your own natural state. Like I often like to cry, because when I cry it feels like a deeper release than even anger or catharsis. I just don't pretend that what I'm doing isn't an intentional effort to make myself cry so that I can accomplish the practical goal. It's hard to walk away from that situation not thinking that whatever is your catalyst for sadness is not just a part of you, even if it's not. So I try to relate my sadness to a global situation, that way I can commiserate rather than make it so specifically about me that I'm forcing my body to respond to activation of that memory with actual sadness. You know, I want to be sad about dying children in the world, it's a rational thing to be sad about, and I don't want to be sad about my lack of meaningful romantic partnerships. It's just a trick of the mind, but it's better in my mind to commiserate than to isolate myself as a suffering loner. I can release my sadness into the rest of the world, and it all becomes part of the big sad, which is all the suffering in the world. And while that can seem like this insurmountable and somehow worse problem, in the long run it isn't, because then every time I actually do see examples of humanity overcoming these larger obstacles, I can also use the gladness and joy from that as a catalyst for healing myself. On the personal scale, feeling human has advantages. Accepting flaws as a part of the condition has its unique rewards even if you're depressed. 13. It's actually normal. At some point it becomes comfortable to be depressed. In some ways it's easy. There's not an expectation, you don't have to do anything except lay around. The lifestyle is really different. It takes a lot to get comfortable doing something else. If you notice the difference though, and that your lifestyle changes your mood, then I guess it's just a matter of what do you want more. And what will get you where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, etc. 14. Yes. It took a long time to admit to myself that there was a part of me, an aspect of me that was addicted to feeling bad. I'm reading Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he talks about how our bodies become dependent on the chemicals released. It's a good book worth checking out. While there is a part of you addicted, there is also a part of you that wants out. It is an imbalance of emotions and chemicals. The best part about recognizing this is that it empowers you. We can change what we can acknowledge. You can do it. 15. I feel like this from time to time. And I kind of learned why. Depression for some people is a safe space. A place for people to go when they are scared and don't know how to feel or what to do. People feel like isolation, and feeling depressed is always a place to go when nothing feels like there's hope, almost like a drug addict always going back when they feel like they need the drug. 16. I was quite literally having these exact same sorts of thoughts today. I've sunk into a quite low depression in the past few weeks for a number of reasons, and now that I'm this low, happiness seems almost like something silly and unnatural, and I feel a bit like mocking it. It's almost like I want to see how low I can go. But it also is very painful being this isolated and depressed. So I know that I don't truly like it or want it. But I know exactly what you mean. There very much is an addictive quality to it, and it's like I don't want to let it go, and I even want it to get worse in a certain sense. It seems that the opposite must also be true though, to feel addicted to the light side. Hang in there, my friend. 17. It's a control thing. You crave control in your life, and being depressed gives you some measure of control, since you can somewhat manipulate it like you're doing. The interesting thing is that the human brain is capable of doing the same thing with joy. However, if someone has had a major history of despair in their life, and a scarcity of joy, then joy starts to feel very foreign, while depression can feel like a safe zone. 18. Someone talked about that in behaviorism class. He questioned why is it that the objective positive emotions which emanate from acting precisely in the way that produces them is constantly far away from our reach, while staying beneath the painful monotony of our comfort zones is automatically prevalent. The teacher answered that it lies on our mostly unconscious survival instinct, but while that pretty much doesn't answer the question, it subscribes to what you're pointing at, the fact of the matter that control/stability is a prevalent dwelling place for us. 19. Me too. All I want to do is lay in bed sometimes. Sometimes for days. I'm a raging alcoholic. I've probably drunken over 100 bottles in the past few months. I'll go get another one. I got out of the bathtub hours ago and still sitting here, naked with my fat gaunt out right now. My room's a complete disaster. I look like a hoarder with no hope. I have no desire to clean anything. I'm just sitting here, drink in my hand. I've been eating terrible lately and trying to use my recent heartbreak as an excuse, but in reality I've been doing this shit for years. My mother hates me and probably wants me dead, yet I live with her. I don't even know what's going on with my body. Alls I do is drink alcohol. Trying to go to rehab but keep forgetting to call, but I'm also in rehab for bulimia. At least I go to that, but I still engage in that too. Trying to get a job right now for part-time a couple days a week, but I'm thankful to at least be on disability temporarily for my mental state of health. I've been raped 13 times and I have severe PTSD, and sometimes that's all I think about. I can't be intimate with anyone yet, I'm so deprived. Maybe in my next life I'll be worthy of a true and totally mutual lover. Not this one. I feel completely worthless and don't really care if I pass. I don't think my family gives a shit either. Sorry if this is too weird. That's just a little tip of feeling the iceberg. Stay strong, you aren't alone. 20. To be honest, has it ever crossed your mind that made you an introvert? Introverts are people who prefer alone time, and to a normal it may be seen like a depressing lifestyle, but it's not. I learned it the hard way. Introverts are not depressed people, they just find comfort in less social events. Real depression is terrible, and I don't think it's something you can just get addicted to. I always feel drained when it came to social events compared to everyone else around me that was ambient and extrovert and with healthy mental status that has the best day ever. I learned I had depression because I got negative to the point where I used to self-harm, one of the addictions I had, and cry every day just thinking about killing myself. That just from junior high to high school, but in high school was when I developed terrible anxiety. To top it all off, my parents are terrible at being parents because they didn't find out months before my graduation. They were told multiple times about if, but they didn't take it seriously and told me I needed to get out more, find a partner, and I should be 100% happy again. What a bunch of bullshit. That's all ever hearing from them, and I'm still not cured. I'm too old to be pretending I have depression. 21. I feel the same, and I think it's because people who are trapped in their sadness and pain just must find a way to make it a bit more bearable, because other ways life would be absolutely unbearable. It's our exhausted mind's defense mechanism. If I didn't romanticize my sadness a bit, I'd probably killed myself many years ago. Seeing my illness as a dark and toxic friend makes things a little easier. A little easier to explain to myself, because sometimes I don't understand how and why a single person must carry such a heavy baggage of pain and struggle. 22. I wouldn't say I'm addicted to depression, but I've definitely become dependent on the attention it gives me. I've spent most of my life being somewhere in the middle between happy and sad. I was good at hiding it. It wasn't until I stopped trying to hide it that I began to be acknowledged by people, and that felt good. People reached out to me, checked up on me, and so on. In the unlikely event I manage to get better, I'm afraid that I'll be even more alone than I am now. 23. I would say I had this when I was teenager/young adult. Like I felt more comfortable degrading and undervaluing myself as a protection mechanism, I thought at the time. In reality, though, I feel looking back on it that I was really simply depressed and tried to make reasons as to why it was smart to think that way. I've never really heard it like you've put it, but I think I know what you're getting at. I would have almost an isolated, lonely cocoon of sadness that I felt safe in, as it prevented me from trying to make friends or doing things to help myself, which at the time felt like I was protecting myself from a world that hadn't treated me too well up until that point. I missed the comfort in being sad. Kurt Cobain. 24. I'm in love with my depression. I like to think a dark and foreboding beast is waiting to comfort me, and when I give in, I turn to embrace it, and it slowly consumes me. For a while it's beautiful laying in its arms, but when I want to leave, the weight of it is almost suffocating. Its claws have embedded themselves into my bones. It's like a drug I know I shouldn't take. It's just sat there waiting in my shadow, waiting for something to make me turn its way. 25. Yes. Realizing this was one of the major things that helped me dig out, and stay out, of a hole for a while. Follow that feeling and watch you thinking, conjuring up negative emotion, etc. Pay close attention. You will likely find, holy shit, there's this part of me that likes this, and that is quite shocking and expanding for your self-concept. It's the beginning of the way into the deeper unconscious issue. 26. I've struggled with this most of my life. I've always liked to be sad, but I also love to be happy. I've found I'm a good asking contradiction, and you have to just choose what you want your future to look like. I didn't realize until about a month ago that all my dreams have changed because I've grown. I've realized I've had the ability to change this whole time. You just have to make a choice. I decided I wanted to stop being an alcoholic because my very serious significant other told me he wouldn't have kids with an alcoholic. It was an easy decision from there. Him or alcohol. Saddens and giving in to temptation and playing with the potential to hurt my future or decide to make different decisions and do things that make me happy and look for the future. I have my days. It's not black or white, but it's about a decision and how much you want it. 27, yes. Unfortunately, you aren't the only one. Depression for me is like a drug. Weird analogy, I know, but it's like. Depression gives me something good whereas happiness does not. In my perspective, I like my personality more when I'm sad. Because I hate myself if I'm being too happy or too excited. I'm pathetic when I'm so overjoyed. Also, I never feel like I deserve to be happy, so I always return to be depressed. 28. Being isolated is the easier route. As one who has felt the effects of depression for about 8 years now, I am well used to isolating myself. It's easy to lock yourself away and listen to music and ignore the world that is going on outside. I'm doing it right now. Yet I'm on Reddit. There's always a reason for the depression though. Dig deep and think about your reason. I just haven't accepted my reason yet. And being depressed is not necessarily a bad thing. It means we feel. And if we didn't feel, then we would not appreciate music.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.